Yo, what's good everybody, this is Rockin here, welcome back to a brand new video. In this video I'm going to be teaching you 3 awesome, easy effects that you can use in your gaming montages, or in my case, Valorant montages. And for all of these effects, you're not going to need any paid plugins whatsoever. If you do like this video and find it helpful, I have 6 other videos exactly like this one. I have the links to those all down in the description. Other than that, like the video, subscribe, and drop a comment with any other videos you'd like to see on the channel. And without any further ado, let's get into it. So we're going to open up Adobe Premiere Pro. In this tutorial, I will be using Adobe Premiere Pro, although absolutely everything that I show you is also available in After Effects. If you'd prefer to do it over there, then go ahead and do that. And some of these effects may even be a little bit easier in After Effects if you prefer to use that. If you don't have Adobe Premiere Pro or After Effects, then I'll leave links in the description to where you can go and grab them. And we'll start by dragging our first clip into our project bin. For this tutorial, we're going to be using all Valorant clips from Unknown Edit's Clips Pack. I'll leave a link in the description to where you can go and check it out. Make sure to go and show them some love, his clip packs are awesome. And let's jump straight into effect number 1. So I'm just going to right click on the clip in the project bin, and I'm going to click new sequence from clip. And you can see it's brought it over onto our timeline over here. I'll be putting all the project files from this video over on my Patreon, so make sure to head over there with a link in the description and grab those if you want to follow along. A big thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon. You get a whole list of perks over there, and I'll put everyone's names on screen. Okay, so this first effect is quite popular. You've probably have seen it in some of Zishu's recent videos, as well as I've seen a few other editors use it. And essentially all it is an effect where the gameplay almost pops out of your monitor and the hands of the character are overlaid on top, and then it zooms back in into a kill. So I'll put an example on screen of what that looks like. And let's get started. So I'm going to find the kill that I want to use. So I'm going to just scroll through the clip, and I want to use this one here. Where he uses Razor's ult. So I'm just going to cut the clip about here. So I'll just cut the start of the clip off. I'm going to scroll through to the point where I want to start cutting out the hand. So I'm going to start around here. I'll start on this frame, and I'm going to cut the video there. So you can see I now have two. So you can see I have 2 separate clips. Now what we want to do is mask out the hands. So there's multiple ways you can do this. If you're using Adobe Premiere Pro, then you're going to have to just use a mask. Now, unfortunately, masking is going to be quite long and tedious, although I do believe that it is the best way to do it, and it gives you the most granular control, but it just does take a while. Alternatively, what you can do is if you select the clip, right-click, and come up to replace with After Effects composition, you'll be able to open it up in After Effects and use a tool called the Roto Brush, which is essentially like the magic wand tool in Photoshop, where it will have a good go at automatically selecting the areas that you're looking for. I'm not going to cover Roto Brushing in this tutorial, but if you'd like to learn how to do it, I'll put a link in the top right corner of the video right now, as well as in the description to one of my previous videos where you can learn how to do pretty much this exact thing. But because we're sticking with Premiere Pro for today, I'm going to show you how to mask it out. You want to select your clip, come over to the effect controls, and click the pen tool here. I'm just going to click down here off to the side of my clip to place a point, which is where we're going to start masking from. Now, if you have the viewport window selected and hover over it and press the tilde key on your keyboard, it should be above tab and next to 1. It will make the clip full screen. Now what I'm going to do, which is going to help us, is I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So we'll sort of go with 200%, and that's just going to allow us to get a lot closer and be more accurate with our masking. So I'm just going to start by clicking around to mask out the area, scrolling the viewport to the side, and we're just going to want to mask out the hands of whichever character you're playing. Now, a tip for this is to try and make as little points on the mask as you can, because you're going to be manual. The less points you have, the less points you have to move every time, but you want to strike that balance between having enough points that you can get the detail and make it as accurate as it needs to be, whilst also not overcomplicating things for yourself. So I'm just going to join these points up here, and you can see we've now successfully masked out the arms. So I'm just going to press the tilde key again to go back to the normal view and fit this to the screen and fit this to the screen, and you can see there's sort of a feather on this mask. So I'm just going to want to come over, so I'm just going to select the clip, come over to the effect controls, and drag the mask feather down to 0, and you can see now it's pretty sharp. You'll see I missed a couple bits here, so it's not exactly accurate, but for the sake of this tutorial I'm just going to do a rough outline, and then I'm going to press the right arrow key on my keyboard to skip forward 1 frame, and you'll see that the mask has moved. So to make this easier for ourselves, what I'm going to do is select the clip, hold down Alt on my keyboard, and drag the clip up to make a duplicate, and on this bottom one I'm just going to delete the mask, and there you go. Now we can see the background, and with the mask selected you can see where it is, and this will make it easier to trace where the arm is instead of, you know, just working from a black background. So now we'll start moving them to match this next frame. So just before we do that, we want to save our changes to the previous frame. So I'm just going to go back 1, and under the mask path I'm just going to click the stopwatch, and that's going to set a keyframe for where our mask is. So essentially it's going to save this mask on this frame. So if I go to the next frame, you see if we make any changes here and we go back, you'll see it's specific to that frame onwards. So selecting and pressing the tilde key, scrolling down and moving all of these points on. And there you go, you can see that I moved the points on. And if I come back out and fit it to the screen and hide this layer underneath, you'll see that the mask now animates like this to follow the arm. And essentially you're just going to rinse and repeat this for every frame and cut out all the objects that you want to. Now to save time and for the sake of the tutorial, I'm just going to delete this. I'm just going to bring in this mask that I made earlier using After Effects and the Roto brush. It's just a rough mask that I did quickly, but I wanted to save time in the tutorial. But essentially you'll just follow the steps that I did previously and you'll have pretty much the exact same result as this. So you'll have the clip on top, which will be the mask, and then the clip below, which will be obviously the clip itself. So if I just hide the one beneath, you can see that we have the mask out now of the hands just like that. Now comes the fun bit, and that's where you actually video your monitor itself. So you're going to want to have your edit open in your editing software just like we do here, and you're going to want to grab a camera or your phone or whatever that you have to film it. So I'll put the video on screen of what I recorded. I just did it on my phone handheld. If you wanted to, you could probably stick it on a tripod, and then instead of actually moving the camera physically, you could do it in post and just change the scale and sort of zoom into the monitor that way. The only reason I didn't want to do that is because I didn't want to drop in quality. As you zoom in, the resolution gets lower. But essentially just copy what I did. I recommend doing it in a dark room just because it makes the monitor stand out a bit more. And make sure when you record that you drag the playhead far enough back that you have some leeway at the beginning and the end. So instead of starting the clip here when recording, I'll just start it from the beginning, play it the whole way through so that I have, a couple of seconds either side that I can work with. And now I'll drag and drop that video into Premiere Pro. And I'm going to move my mask layer up one track and put my video beneath just like this. Now I don't want the audio of it, so I'm going to select the video, press Ctrl L to unlink the audio and delete the audio. Now I'm going to scroll through my video and try and find the point where I started the masking of the hands. So as I scroll through, you can see I bring my phone in here, and when the arm pops out is the first frame of my mask. So I'm going to cut the clip there and discard this half, bring it along underneath my masked area, and you'll see that now the masked out hands should mirror exactly what's on the monitor screen, just like that. And you can see the transition almost happens itself. So if I now drag my video down so that it's no longer than my mask clip, so I'll drag it down just like that, you'll see that the transition pretty much happens itself, just like that. Now I mistimed my zoom out to start with, so essentially what I'm going to do is just set a keyframe when I'm at the furthest out from the monitor, which is about here. Just going to set a keyframe on the scale and the position and scroll back to the start, and by lowering the opacity of my monitor clip just like that, so I can see the clip beneath as well, I'm going to scale my monitor clip by changing the scale of position values up here so that it more or less matches with the gameplay itself. So by dragging these values, we'll try and get it as close as we can. So we're still going to need to go a little bit bigger than that. I think about there, you'll see as I increase and decrease the opacity of this clip is pretty much as close as we're going to get it to being an exact fit. So now we've got the position and scale keyframes set. It will animate over time as we zoom out like that, and that'll just make the transition that much smoother. Pretty much exact match there. And then I got it pretty close on the way in, but again I will have a go at this as well, I think. So we'll start back before I start zooming in, set 2 more keyframes, go back into the last frame, and let's see what we can do about this. And there you go. As you can see, we've got a pretty decent match on the start and a pretty good one at the end. So if I play this through, that is essentially what it looks like right now. So we've matched up the start and we've matched up the end. Now what you can do is try and get a better color match between the background video and the gameplay itself. So all I'm going to do for that is I'm going to duplicate our background clip and put it above, and I'm just going to mask out a section of the grass as you can see right here. So we have an idea of the color that we're going for. So I'll select the Lumetri color panel, and then from here you can see we have all of our color settings. Now for some reason, when I make changes over here to the Lumetri color, you'll see that it doesn't actually change anything, but instead what it does do is add a Lumetri color effect over here. Now I'm not sure if this is a bug with the latest version of Premiere Pro, but for whatever reason it isn't working, but that doesn't matter because we have the settings over here which do work. So I'm going to drag the saturation down a little bit, and we'll drag the exposure down a little bit, and you'll see before and after it's a much closer match to this color now. And I just added a little bit more saturation back, and I think that's pretty much as close as I'm going to get it without spending ages. So you'll see it was just two quick adjustments, exposure and saturation, just like that, and it's made it a much closer color match. So now if I delete our reference clip, just like that, you'll see the color difference between the two clips, and therefore the transition will be much smoother. And now finally, all we need to do is add our kill effects. So I'll create a new item and make it an adjustment layer, drag that on top of our clip, go to the point where we get the kill, which is right here. Make sure our adjustment layer covers it. I'll shrink it down a little bit, just like that. That should cover it. Let's go for brightness and contrast, drag and drop that on the adjustment layer, and we'll increase our brightness to sort of 60 odd, and keyframe it, go back one frame, put it back to 0 so that it only appears as soon as we get the kill, and over time to about here I'll put it back to 0. And if we jump back to that keyframe and repeat with a Gaussian blur, and we'll sort of do 30%, maybe that's a bit much, 25%, keyframe that, back one frame again, back to 0, and to this keyframe and 0, and we'll see what that looks like. As you can see, it's a pretty decent effect, but I also want to add a scale, so let's add the transform adjustment layer, distort transform, drag and drop that on the adjustment layer, and we'll add some scale. So I'll go to sort of 170-ish, back to 100, and we'll go 100 here as well. I think I'd like to animate these by making them a Bezier curve, dropping this down, and we'll pull this. Let's also add a bit of lens distortion, so we'll drop back to our first keyframe, look for lens distortion, drag and drop that on, and when we get the kill, we'll keyframe our curvature at 0, back one frame, and we'll have it increase like this, and we'll go back to here and put it back to 0. So it should zoom in like this, and then pop, and all the other effects happen at the same time. So this is what the whole clip looks like. Again, not perfect. If you check out my first top 5 effects in Premiere Pro video, I cover in greater detail how to do these kind of kill effects. So you're basically just going to be layering these effects and mess around with the keyframes till you get something that looks nice. And you can use this in combination with loads of different effects, like, you know, in this case I used it with the monitor one. And now the only thing I think that's missing from this effect is like a really good song to like sell the effect. Like I want something with a solid beat to sync to. And now if you've been watching my videos for a while, you'll know exactly where I'm going to go to find the song I need for this edit. Of course, it's a good friend of the Rockland channel, Licked. So I'm just going to head over to Licked's website, link at the top of the description, and let's see what we can find. Now, if you don't already know what Licked is an amazing service offering the biggest music catalog for creators like us to use in our edits completely copyright claim free. As you can see, Licked makes it extremely easy to find exactly what you're looking for with their categorized playlist to suit any video. Just look how many popular artists they have. Alright, so let's scroll through and see what we can find. Now, I know I want to go for a kind of like a hip hop song, so let's see, what's Drake? Or, oh, Internet Money. With like a decent beat drop. That's a pretty good drop, but I kind of want it to like stop before the beat, if you know what I mean, like so it goes quiet, and then I think that'll just make it like the impact a bit harder. So I found this song by Trippie Redd, which has a pretty good beat as well. But again, I think I just like it is quieter before, but I want something more kind of impactful. Okay, so scrolling down the featured artist section, and I come across Ian Dior, and there's this song Holding On, which I think is exactly what I'm looking for. Love's not for everyone, but I still try. I've been holding on, don't know why. You see how it goes silent just before the drop. Now, one thing I love about this is it's been proven that people watch your videos longer and engage with them more when you use music that they recognize. Now, if you didn't know, not only do Licked have over 1 million mainstream songs, but they also have an amazing stock music catalog, including over 100,000 tracks with unlimited use across any social media platform, all included in your one subscription. So don't get your video claimed, sign up to Licked with the link at the top of the description for 14 days free stock music and 50% off your first mainstream track. Big shout out and thank you to Licked for sponsoring this video, and I'm going to go and download that track now. Okay, so now that we've agreed to the license and we've downloaded the song, I'm going to drag and drop it into my project file just like this. As you can see, there's the song that we just downloaded, and I'm going to drag and drop it onto my timeline just like this. Now, another great thing about how I was looking for a song with a good beat drop is you'll see on the waveform here, right here, is exactly where the music cuts out and there's the beat drop. So that was super easy to spot. If you're not using a song that's quite as obvious as this, then obviously listen through to it, find the section that you're looking for and trim it accordingly. In my case, you know, I'll just play it for you to prove.
Not for everyone, but I still try. I've been holding on.
As you can see, that's exactly the part that I was looking for. And let's drag it down and get it into place. If you want to see more of the waveform, you can always extend the audio layer just like this, and it'll show you the waveform in greater detail. If you want to see the waveform on Adobe After Effects, make sure you select the audio layer and then double tap the L key on your keyboard and it will show the waveform. Now let's move this into place, and I will mark the point when we get the kill. I'm going to do it on the layer, so I'm going to press the M key on my keyboard to mark the layer. You can also mark the sequence like this, but the only reason I don't like marking the sequence is because if I happen to move this layer, this marker no longer corresponds to anything. So I would usually mark the video that has the kill in it. So now we just line up our kill with the beat drop, and we'll listen through to it.
Everyone, but I still try.
Now, as a matter of fact, I actually don't think that syncing this up with the kill is going to be as good as syncing it up with when Raze shoots the rocket. So I'll go back in time a little bit to where the rocket's fired. So I'm going to time it right here, so when the transition happens, and I will reline up my clip, my marker, or I'll reline up the audio with this instead, and let's listen through to that and see how that sounds. Now, as a matter of fact, I think I actually prefer that a lot more. Not only does it have the initial beat drop when it shoots the rocket, but also you'll hear here. He says bin right as the kill happens, so we've sort of got a double sync going on here, and I think that's really cool. And now the last thing I'm going to do is add a quick sound effect, so I'll drag and drop it into my project file. I have no idea where I got this sound effect from, what pack, whose it is, anything like that, but I'll whack it on Google Drive and put a link in the description to it. And if you know whose it is, let me know and I'll give them credit and link their pack instead. But I do get people asking me for sound effects like this all the time, and I have no idea where they come from, so I just have it. So what this one sounds like, if I play it through here, it's just a sort of like a sword swish sound. It's called Quick Dagger, and I'm just going to position that right here just as we get the kill, and we'll listen to that. And I think that sounds decent. Of course, I'd mess around with it a bit longer if I was making a whole montage, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to call this effect done. And now let's move on to effect number 2. So the second effect of the video is a sort of glitch effect. It's pretty much just something else to layer on top of, you know how before we were adding brightness, contrast, blurs, and some scale effects. It's just another something that I found which you could add on as well, which doesn't require any extra plugins. So like other popular free effects like Minimax, for example, exist in Adobe After Effects, so they don't exist in Premiere Pro. So this is just another alternative if you want to stick to Premiere Pro. And you don't have any of the, the Sapphire or the Red Giant plugins. So what the effect is called is Wave Warp. So I'll search for that and you can see under Distort Wave Warp. I'm going to drag a new adjustment layer onto my clip. This is what the clip looks like, by the way.
Spike down mid.
Just a pretty basic clip, I haven't done anything to it yet. And what I'm going to do is go to the part of the clip where it gets the kill. So we're going to be looking for that last bullet to land, which is right there. And we'll drag and drop the wave warp onto this top adjustment layer. Now there's plenty you can do with this effect. As you can see, there's these kind of waves. You can almost use it as an alternative to like turbulent displace if you want to. As you can see here, distort, turbulent displace, you can use these sort of interchangeably. But because we're going for a kind of glitch effect, what I'm going to do is change the wave type from sine to square. We're going to rotate the waves by 180 degrees, so they're now going horizontal, and we'll make the wave width something bigger, sort of like 95, something like that. And we'll change the wave height, which is how, pulled across they are, to something like 20. I find that 20 usually works best. And I'm also going to drop the wave speed down to 0 because I don't want this to be animated in this case. It's just going to be a sort of fade in and fade out. So we're on the frame where we get the kill, and I'm going to keyframe the wave height. So I'll go forward to the point where I want the waves to sort of disappear. So we'll go to somewhere around here, and we're going to drop the wave height down to 0. As you can see, like that. And you'll see currently it's a bit bugged. The waves aren't actually being displayed. And the reason for that is because I have an adjustment layer underneath, which I'll re-enable so that you can actually see the difference. For some reason, when I'm changing the wave height with an invisible layer underneath it, it doesn't like it, but whatever. And then we'll set the wave height to 0 here as well, so that essentially we have it go from 0 to 20 and then gradually fades back to 0. Now this adjustment layer underneath is pretty much exactly what we had on the last clip. So we've got our brightness and contrast, we've got our Gaussian blur, and we've got our scale. So just use the same adjustment layer again. Or like I said, if you're downloading my project files from Patreon, then you'll have this adjustment layer already. And if I scroll through the clip, this is essentially what it looks like, where it adds these kind of blinds to the video. Now I want I want the waves to last a little bit longer than that, so I'll just pull that keyframe out a little bit and you'll see it lasts a bit longer there. Now a problem we're having is these black areas around the side. That's because obviously it's shifting the clip across and there's nothing left behind it. So in order to fix this, what we can do is just duplicate the layer and put it underneath. Now, if I duplicate the clip, as you'll see if I move these up and duplicate the clip underneath, you know, nothing happens because the adjustment layer above is affecting everything below it. So what we need to do is I'm going to grab a copy of this middle adjustment layer, which has the brightness and contrast on it, move that out of the way and hide it. And I'm going to select the one with the waves on it, the one with the brightness and contrast, and the base clip. I'm going to right click and do nest and press OK. And as you can see, we've got this nested sequence, which underneath has our main clip. Now, as you can see, the edges don't match again because the brightness and contrast and scales and everything don't apply to this current bottom layer. And that's what we have this extra adjustment layer for. So if I move the nested sequence up, bring the adjustment layer underneath, and as you can see, the black edges have completely disappeared. And this is what the effect looks like. So I'll play it through now.
Go, go. Spike down mid.
And there you go. It's just another cool effect that you can add to your arsenal, and you know, drop it in an edit here or there. Just something else that I found, another effect that you don't need any paid plugins for. Okay, and onto the final effect for the video. This is going to be depth of field. So I'm going to show you 3 different ways of doing this, and I think you should use all 3 across your montages, and it adds an extra layer of quality and visual fidelity to your edits and makes them look more professional. So here I have another clip from Unknown Edits Clip Pack, although I've just taken one frame from it and I've frozen the frame because for the sake of the tutorial, I don't want to have to worry about animating masks. So instead, I've just grabbed a single frame purely for demonstration purposes. Now I'm currently developing a piece of software that will automatically generate depth maps from an input video, so that you don't have to worry about manually masking everything out, and instead when you add a camera blur you can just set that depth map as the blur map. But the software's not quite ready yet, and if I can find some extra time to work on it, then I should be able to finish it off and release it soon. So stay tuned for a video on that, which will hopefully make depth of field effects much easier. But in the meantime, this is currently the best way to do it. So to start with, I'm just going to mask out this gun. Now again, much like with the monitor effect, masking is going to be very tedious and long and you'll have to animate the mask. Although I will show you one version of depth of field where animating the mask and masking is going to be significantly easier and less time consuming. But I'll show you the first 2 ways, which involves very precise masks, and then I'll show you the third way afterwards, which will be significantly easier and sometimes even looks better depending on your clip. So once again, over to the mask panel, I'm going to select the pen tool and we're going to full screen our clip by pressing the tilde key, just like we did before, and I'm going to zoom in 200%, scroll down, and we're going to start making our mask here. Once again, because I'm working on a still image, I'm going to make loads of marker points, whereas if you're animating the mask, you're going to want to keep these relatively low so that you don't have to worry about moving so many of them. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm not too worried about that. And as you can see, as I join the mask up, there we go. We've got the gun masked out. Now I'm going to press the tilde key again to come out of full screen and fit the viewport to the display. So there we go. And as you'll see, we've got a feather on the mask again, so I'm just going to remove that feather, and I'm going to duplicate the clip, drag it above, and remove the mask from the bottom clip. So essentially we have this cutout gun here that we can move around and do whatever we want with. So the first version of depth of field is blurring the background, so I'm going to select the background clip, go up to effects, I'm going to search camera, blur, here we go, camera blur, and I'm going to drag and drop that onto the bottom clip and set the percentage blur to something really low. We're talking like 3, something like that. Even that may be too much depending on your clip, so we can go for sort of 2. And as you can see right there, it just adds another layer to your edit, and if you can do this for every frame of the edit, for example, then it can look really cool. Now, I wouldn't recommend having the background blurred all the time. If you're shooting at someone, you're probably going to want the opposite, which is what this second version is for. So I'm just going to cut that clip there so we have a background version, version and we'll make a foreground version now. So let's remove that camera blur from the background layer and instead we'll add it to the top layer. We'll lower our percentage blur to about 3 for example, and you'll see the mask looks kind of ugly like this. So what I recommend doing is expanding the mask a bit. So we'll sort of expand it kind of like that, and then we'll feather it as well, just to get that illusion that the gun itself is out of focus. And as you can see, there you go, comparison of the background blurred versus the foreground blurred. And what I'd recommend you do is animate between these two. So for example, if there's nothing in the background at that current scene, then I would have the background blurred and the gun in focus. But if you're shooting at someone, maybe blur the gun instead, just like this. So you're sort of going to use a combination of the two. And now the final version, which is the easier one. We do not need a gun mask at all. And instead we're just going to duplicate the layer and we're going to mask out areas that we think should be blurred. So the way that the depth of field will work is, you could have things in the foreground in focus, things in the background out of focus. So for example, far away, you can see behind the jet over here, we've got this far background area, which probably should be out of focus. So let's fix that. So we'll zoom in a little bit and we'll start at the top, grab the pen, and we'll mask this area out. Now again, I'm going to be going probably a bit more detailed than it needs to be. So for example here, you could probably just get away with doing one straight line like that. And this is going to be a hell of a lot easier to animate over time than worrying about tracing around a gun every frame. So we'll just do another straight line there, another straight line there. Let's just do a straight line there too. And we'll finish it off just like that. Now, as you can see, we've masked that out. We'll add our camera blur to that, drop it to like 3. And by messing around with the feather a bit, you'll see we could essentially blur far away backgrounds. So I think that might be a little bit too much, so we can drop it to 2 or even 1. I think I'll leave it with 2. And again, that adds a bit more depth to our scene. Now we don't have to necessarily do it like this. We could move the mask to come closer and we'll expand this mask over here and really increase the feather. Sort of go something like that, and that can be a bit more of a gradual kind of blur into the background. So by increasing the feather, it just makes the transition between what's in focus and what's out of focus a bit smoother. So if I make this full screen, we zoom in a bit, we'll go 200%, let's do more than that, 400%. You can see it gradually changes between in focus and out of focus, compared to if we left our mask feather at 0. This really doesn't look very good. And yeah, that's the easier way of doing depth of field. You can see we've got half as many points here as we do over here, so animating it over time is going to be a lot easier, and as long as you're tasteful with it, I think it can look quite good. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the 3 easy effects that you can do in Adobe Premiere Pro and After Effects for your gaming montages, in this case Valorant montages. Make sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe if you found the video helpful at all. Leave a comment with future videos you'd like to see on the channel, as well as let me know what you thought about this video. Check out my Patreon to get my project files and support me. Big shout out to Licked and thanks for sponsoring this video. Go check them out with the link at the top of the description. And other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.